Hello and welcome to the Purpose Pursuit podcast with me, Hannah Miller. If you are listening live and in order, you'll know that we're currently in a series where we're looking at the concept of purpose. Now, obviously, this whole podcast looks at purpose. Everything that we talk about is somehow weaved into the concept of purpose. But we're doing a really sharp focus on the difference purpose can make in our lives at the moment. That is because I think it can often be seen as a bit of an elusive word that feels like it's out there and we don't understand how to bring it into our everyday lives. But also we are preparing for the launch of my coaching program, the Purpose Pursuit course. And these sessions are to help people understand a bit of the difference that a pursuit of purpose can make in their lives. And this particular episode in our series is called Purpose Breaks Self-Doubt. And we're looking at why it can be so hard to believe in ourselves, but why we absolutely should. And really, this episode is for pretty much everybody. The data shows that over 85% of all people suffer from self-doubt. I think it's probably higher than that. In the work I do, I very rarely come across individuals who do not self-doubt, who do not feel sometimes like an imposter, who do not shrink back or feel like they can't do it or can't do more than they are or that they should be doing better, or they lack the confidence to step out and do that brave thing. It's very unusual for me to meet somebody who, in all walks of life and in any level of leadership, that hasn't got those moments of self-doubt. One of the voices that has been particularly kind of apparent in my life is the voice that says, "Who do you think you are?" I literally can hear that voice sometimes. Who do you think you are? And that is a form of self-doubt. And honestly, if I listened to that voice, there are so many things I would not have done. Add to that another voice which says, what do you think other people think of you right now? And if I listened to that all the time, which I, by the way, do sometimes, there's so many things I wouldn't have done. Like sitting here doing a podcast, it's so easy for you to think that there's no internal narrative that's going on for me of why do you think you have anything to say? Why do you think anyone's going to listen to you? What do your school friends think? That's a funny, weird thing that comes back to my mind. I don't know why school friends are particularly important, but clearly there's something in that for me. What do you think you've got to contribute? People are already talking about this topic, so why do they need your voice? People can do it better than you. You're not doing it well enough. You need to spend more time in it. You should be more prepped. You're not doing this perfectly enough or well enough. All of those things can go round and round in my head. So I want to say that I'm in this boat with you, but I'm learning to see it for what it is. And one of the most important things I've done before is talk to people about it. And I remember one time being at I was at a speaking development retreat. It was 2 days away and it was all about developing your skills as a speaker. And it was an all-female event, actually. It was for women speakers. And me and my friend were there together. And actually, we were one of the last two people to go up and do our presentations. And when we got in the car on the way home, we had a bit of a debrief because we'd both had quite the major wobble. We'd had a wobble in terms of the people in the room whose opinions mattered to us. We'd had a bit of a crisis of confidence. I'd felt like this direct comparison to her. She felt that she'd underperformed in the moment. So both of us were feeling a bit of a crisis of confidence. And one of the most powerful things about that was that we chose to speak about it with each other. I could have easily thought she was just smashing it. And she could have easily thought, oh, Hannah did really, really well. And she's got nothing to feel lacking in confidence. But this self-doubt isn't always based in facts. It's not even based in evidence. In fact, a lot of the people who feel like they shouldn't be there or who do they think they are really quite capable people who've got a track record that they could be falling back on by now. And they still doubt, they still wonder whether they should do it. A KPMG study found that 75% of female executives across industries have experienced a sense of imposter syndrome or imposterism, which is essentially that feeling of inadequacy and self-doubt that continuously makes you feel you're not good enough for the job. And we often talk about it in the workplace, but you can feel like this in other roles. What about being a mom? Do we talk about imposter syndrome as a mom? You know, feeling like I'm really not capable of doing this job, or imposter syndrome as a friend or a partner, or other people are just better than this at this than I am. There's also the statistics around how particularly women feel about applying for jobs, a new job, that they will only apply for it if they meet 100% of the criteria, and men generally will apply when they meet 60% of the criteria. Now, I don't think that's bad on men. I think that's a women issue, that we need to feel actually we don't need to have everything in order to do something. We need to be on the right tracks. We need to be moving in the right direction, knowing that you grow within that process of being stretched. Nobody who's sitting in a new job and they're doing something for the first time feels that they've got everything that they should have. In fact, if they do feel that they've got everything that they need, that's actually quite dangerous. And I'll come back to that thought in a minute. 2/3 of all adults, 62%, lack confidence. Arden University launched the UK's first confidence index, and that's what they found, that 62% of adults in the UK lack confidence. 32% say this even affects their mental health and well-being. 21% of women severely lack confidence, and 15% of men. And there is an inner critic in 75% of women and 65% of men. An inner critic. That's a lot of the population listening to an inner critic. And that inner critic is powerful and common. And there's nothing wrong with being aware of us not having everything, but this inner critic can be quite debilitating for some people. It holds them back. They second guess everything. They stay in the comfort zone, and they don't offer everything they have to give. Now, I do want to kind of counter this by saying, actually, there is research and there is a school of thought which suggests, and I agree with it, that actually having some level of confidence wobble is not a bad thing if it helps us to pursue greater competence, if it helps us to collaborate with other people. What I would say is that what is helpful and healthy is an honest measure of yourself. To be able to be somebody who says, I'm really good at that. I remember talking to somebody a while ago and they said, yeah, that's something I'm really good at. I'm really good at this, this and this. They said 3 things. It was a guy who was joining the trustee board of one of the charities that I work for. And he said, I'm really good at this, this and this. He said 3 things. And he said, but I'm not so good at this and this. And I just thought that is a really good way of representing yourself. He knew confidently what he did well, but he also knew what he didn't do so well and where he would need help. And that is the line between hubris, which is I'm amazing and I'll do everything on my own and I don't need anyone, and self-doubt, which is over here, I can't contribute anything. Who do I think I am? Why am I even here? It's a space in between those which you could call humility. What's quite interesting is that the person who was pulling this research together talked about how both hubris and self-doubt are opposite extremes of confidence, but the thing they have in common is that both rooted in the same unhealthy fixation on ourselves. And if I can, I know this is a self-development podcast, but if I can say that there is a bit of an unhealthy focus on ourselves, I would say that's definitely something that's shifted in culture, that we are so aware of ourselves, of our shortcomings, of our of the way we contribute, the things we do, the things others do, that this has become like a preoccupation with ourselves. And humility sits between both those things because it's more about having an honest measure of yourself and then a preoccupation in how you can show up and contribute, and a preoccupation in the people around you. And when I am more occupied in how can I help, what can I contribute, and who are these people, actually my confidence grows. I remember hearing a speaker say how when they're about to give a talk to a group of people, whatever setting they're in, whatever type of speaking it is, they try their best before that speaking begins to make a connection with the people in front of them, and remember that they're here to offer like service and care to that group of people. And I thought that was so helpful, and I've taken that into my own practice to think about the audience in front of me and think I'm here for you, so that the focus comes off me and onto how I can show up and over to them. So I think you don't need to throw out every doubt that you have or any wobble that you have, because actually learning to collaborate and learning to ask for help rather than being, this I should have everything myself, can be so helpful. Self-doubt is when everything has to go through the filter of other people and you're stuck in almost like paralysis from making a step forward because you are so doubting yourself that you just remain stuck. And that's why this is so helpful to our conversations about purpose and around people who get involved with the Purpose Pursuit course or read my book, is because they are stuck, some people, because they just have lost their confidence. They are doubting themselves. They don't think that they are enough. Overcoming self-doubt, Brené Brown says, is all about believing we are enough and letting go of what the world says we're supposed to be and supposed to call ourselves. And this is this idea that we are some things, but we are not everything. And I want to explore that concept with you today. But there is a reason why we need to believe in ourselves, and it's not just for selfish reasons because our life feels better and we feel more comfortable. It's also quite selfish not to overcome self-doubt. And I say that with all the love in the world, because if I play small, if I doubt myself, if I never step out or make decisions or try for that bigger thing or that different thing or that new thing, that affects other people. It doesn't just affect me. As a parent, it affects the way my children see the world. As a colleague, it affects the way my colleagues experience me. And the contribution that I'm designed to make, you could argue, is perhaps not going to be made by me or anybody else if I don't do it. So who am I to overblow myself, but who am I to underplay who I've been made to be? And I think it can be quite selfish sometimes for us to just think small, play small, shrink back. And I want to encourage you as you're listening that it's not helpful for anybody to play small. By that, I don't mean that you have to have massive goals and dreams. I don't mean that. But to play small in your thinking around the contribution, the difference that you can make to your loved ones, to your community, to your workplace, that's not helpful. It's actually quite selfish, because it means that the things that you contribute are going to be missing from that environment. And this kind of self-doubt that we're talking about can show up, as I've said already, through that feeling of imposter syndrome, or imposterism, as I call it in my book. It can show up through a perfectionist attitude. I'm not going to do it unless I can do it brilliantly. And it can show up through a fixed mindset. Really briefly, imposter syndrome is when you could be achieving significant milestones and you could be doing really, really well and receiving recognition, but you feel no internal sense of success and you see yourself as an imposter. I've been thinking about that in relation to the book coming out, and if you're listening to this in live time, my book is available for pre-order and comes out in December, and a few people have said, how do you feel? And honestly, I haven't felt a huge internal sense of like success. And I don't know whether that's because it's still a bit surreal because I haven't seen a copy in the flesh. I don't know whether it's because there's a bit of imposterism going on for me, and I'm like, I shouldn't be here. This shouldn't have happened. I'm living out what I'm talking about here in my own life, in trying to think, actually, I do have a right to be here. I do have a right to show up and contribute. I do have a right to make a book. And this goes across every sort of level of success and accolade that people have. I often quote Sheryl Sandberg, who used to be the COO of Meta, and she talks about her own sense of imposterism. She says, every time I took a test, I was sure it would go badly. And every time I didn't embarrass myself, or even I excelled, I believed that I'd fooled everyone yet again. And I just thought one day the jig would soon be up. And Seth Godin, who is an award-winning author, said, yes, you're an imposter, so am I, and so is everyone else. And I think we've got to kind of recognise that this is a universal condition that comes about from us not being as honest as we should be about some of this stuff. I'm really grateful to people like Sheryl Sandberg and others who don't just put out this narrative of I'm smashing it, I feel great every day. They're also not letting this thing get in their way and stop them from making the progress they want in their life. On top of that, the whole concept of fixed mindset, which again, we cover in the course, I go into great detail in my book, is this idea that unless I can do it brilliantly straight away, I can't do it. Or something where I'm back on the learning curve, or if I fail, or if I make a mistake, which kind of connects this idea of perfectionism. It's this desire to make sure I don't fail. I don't want to risk anything. That means that I won't embrace those things. They shrink back. And again, you can have a fixed mindset and be quite capable of something. And you just think, I don't want anyone to see me do anything but perfection. So I am not going to be able to do this. Now, growing a growth mindset doesn't mean that you can do everything. And I don't subscribe to the idea of, I can turn my hand to anything I want. If I wanted to become a figure skating champion, I'm not going to be able to. Like, I've missed the boat for that. It probably wasn't in my skill set ever, and it's just not going to happen now. We have to choose the things that we want to excel in. We can't do everything, but your personality gives you clues as to the kind of things that we should be pursuing and doing more of, and it gives us the ability to, with intention, step into things that we might find hard straight away. The first time I gave a public presentation is incomparable to the ones that I might give now, and will be incomparable to ones I might do 5 years from now, I hope, because I hope I continue to improve and continue to do better as time goes by. The idea of purpose in all this, because I've said to you, purpose breaks self-doubt. The idea is that when you understand more of your personal purpose, it helps you realise that there is a U-shaped hole in the situations that you are in. There is a U-shaped hole that only you can fit, your purpose. And that comes back to this process of really understanding who we are and what we are not, which I feel many people I work with, when they get into these times of self-doubt, is they've lost sight of the things that make them uniquely who they are. And they think they should be everything, or they should be able to do everything, or they should be more like Laura, or more like Hannah, or more like Sheryl Sandberg, or whoever it is that's around them. And they forget that there is a them-shaped hole that if they do not sort of lean into, it is missing. I was listening to some amazing speakers last week at the time of recording, and I was listening to this one woman. I just was like, you are unbelievably good at your craft. And I was kind of like, I wish I could be more like her. I wish I could be more, do things more her way. I wish I had her sense of freedom and so on. And there were things that I can be like impressed by and value in her and grateful for, but there's a fine line between that turning into something that makes me think that my contribution is therefore not worth it because hers is better. And if you're listening to this and you find yourself caught in that trap, I think a better thing to do is to think how grateful we can be for those individuals that we're looking at, rather than thinking we should be more of them. You need to be more you, a better version of you, a more accomplished version of you, a increasingly an increasingly sharpened version of you, actually, is what we need to be thinking about. The world needs you and what you can bring. One of the things in the book that I talk about is this concept that comes from a man called Vic Stretcher, and he talked about creating something called the headstone test. It's a bit morbid because the headstone is this idea of obviously what would be on your grave, if would it be on your headstone. And he talks about thinking about what would be on your headstone from, you could be 20 years old and consider, what would I like it to say at the end of my life? And those things define some of that sense of personal purpose, so that when we're going through life, we can be asking ourselves, am I making decisions that push me closer to what I would like it to say at the end of my life? Not in a morbid way, but in a kind of growth and expansive way. And I really need to be reminded of that, because sometimes I can get stuck in the petty. I can get stuck in the minutiae of things that aren't important. And if I can keep in my mind's eye and in my vision the person I want to be remembered as being, it will help me live that out right now, today, on the day of recording, as I'm doing this. How do I live out that person more effectively right now? How do I sharpen my focus on that? And so I just want to give you a couple of things you can do to help you overcome self-doubt in the vein of thinking about purpose. You can think about creating a bit of a personal purpose statement that could be like your headstone test. You can have a bit more compassion on yourself, realising that this is a universal issue. Realising that actually sometimes by just saying, I really struggled with this, other people say, me too. And you suddenly realise that most of you, about 75% of you, will be feeling the same way. It's other people who are more unusual. The other thing you can do is really play to your true strengths. Again, it's a huge theme of the course. It's a huge theme of the book. You cannot be everything, but you can be some things, and you can be those things really, really excellently if you practice them. But you've got to know what those things are. You need language around them. You need to be able to articulate them so that you can say, these are these pillars in my life that I'm going to pursue and I'm going to practice so that I am more developed at these things, so that I improve my contribution in this area. And alongside that, you can value the contribution that other people make, saying, I really need you to do this because this is not what I do well. You can also choose to live according to your values and use those as a way of, again, I don't need to doubt this decision. I don't need to doubt this life choice because it's getting me closer like a compass to the life I want to be living. I think another thing we can do that's really helpful is actually remembering the things we've achieved. When Laura and I have our weekly meeting, we stop and think about little weekly wins. Sometimes they're really small things, other times they're really exciting things. But this is a really good process to go through, like the big moments that we're really proud of. When I'm coaching people, I often say to them, tell me about something that you're really proud of, you're involved with. Tell me about what you did. Tell me about that moment. Relive that story with me right now. The happiest moment. I've just started coaching a new client, and I said to him, to tell me about the time you were most fulfilled at work. I want to hear that story because sometimes we forget those things. It is so easy to just move on, turn the page, next chapter, and not pay attention to the little wins, the big wins, and reflecting on the contribution we made in those, which is even more important. If you are able to, one of the things I would love to encourage you to do is to think about a project or something that you worked on that you're really proud of. And even if you don't work there anymore, or even if it's from a previous life stage, get in touch with a couple of people and say, do you remember when we did this? I'd love you to tell me about what you most appreciated about me. I'm doing it for a course I'm on. I'm doing it for some self-development, and see what people say. Some of that feedback will be hugely valuable to you. And you know, feedback from others is wildly important. We need people who champion us. We need people who will be, you know, sharp with us when we need to improve and when we need to do better. But we need people who call out the wonderful things in us and help us go harder after them. I've been fortunate enough to have people in my life that have spotted talent in me and said, we need to give you opportunity for this. And, you know, you need to practice this because it's something that you can do well. So I want to encourage you to think about the highlights in your everyday and the big achievements in life so far, your measure of achievement, not mine, and reflect on who you were and how you showed up. And I think the last thing I want to leave you with is just a word that I cover in my book, which is this word poema. And it's a beautiful word that shows up in, it's a Greek word that has a really deep meaning to it. It's not just poem in Greek, it means so much more. It's this deep idea of you being a one-off masterpiece. It's this idea that you are, if you think about a beautiful piece of artwork that is not perfect, no piece of art is perfect. It's imperfectly perfect, but it is a one-off, unique masterpiece designed, created for a one-off, unique life. And if you can think about the fact that you are a poema, if you're driving your car right now, you are cooking the dinner, whatever you might be doing, that your life has this unique, beautiful aspect to it that nobody else can recreate. That's both exciting, it's a bit overwhelming, but it breaks self-doubt because you're not comparing it to anything else because there is only one. There is only one masterpiece. Nobody's made any copies of this. It's a once in a lifetime, one-off, like a snowflake, like a raindrop. It's that incredible. It doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean you can't grow. But when you have those moments of self-doubt, think, actually, there's something unique about me. I'm not perfect, but I have something hugely important to show up and contribute. And when you know more of that, when you know more about your purpose, it acts as a barrier to push self-doubt back, and it allows you to think, I'm just going to show up and bring that contribution and not any other one. As I've said already, if you would love to dig into this deeper, please get in touch. Find me on socials, look at the show notes, come and do the Purpose Pursuit course, get the book, do something to invest in this because it is one of the most important investments you can make in your life. Bye for now.